So let's go back to your youth playing days. So you're, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12. What did you, as your, because, you went from just being physical, so just being, I don't know, strong, fast, or whatever it was, and you started, building your skill set and really, becoming a player. What did you had at that time? Did you already establish your position, or you were, playing multiple roles?
Yeah, so when I was playing like house to travel, I was like a forward. Um, and I was like quick and fast. Like I've always just had like the speed. Um, and then I left because you said establishing your skill set. I am not the most like I'm not a technical player. I am like such a simple but like smart player, which is why like then I sort of like went from forward to midfield, always on the outside, never a center mid. Um, to I ended up like in college being a center back. And that was because I was able to, I had like a decent, and I'm not gonna like trash myself as a player. But like I had decent enough feet that like I could like make a few quick cuts and then turn their teams around and attack from the defense. So that was like something that I was able to do since I had played midfield previously. Growing up though, I was still like establishing myself as like a player in terms of like where my position was. And it wasn't until I would say that I was like 15, that uh my coach was like, you're gonna be a center back. Like at that point I had moved from like forward to outside mid to outside back. And I want to say that like my transition to outside back was because I think we like didn't have our defenders, and on like one of the teams that I was on growing up, and they were like, Elisa, like you're a great player, like you should obviously be the one that plays outside back. And I think because I was able to like attack down the flanks, that's why they were like, holy shit, this is like something that we haven't really seen as like a defender. Most people would literally just like try and kick the ball out, but you're able to control it, play out of the back, distribute well. So then comes the transition to outside back. And I was quick too. So having that like recovery speed was something that was so much of an asset of mine. Um, and then, I'm 5'2", 5'3", soaking wet. Like I'm a small defender. But again, like that recovery speed, moving back into being like a center back, was something that was needed for all the teams that I played on.
Yeah. You said I mean, that's an interesting transition. And I've heard a lot of people transition, go from forward
Defending.
To outside midfield and back. And you said, I mean, part of it is you're saying you weren't, or you're not, technically, gifted.
Yeah.
Do you think, was it because you weren't, that wasn't a part of the training regimen? Like you didn't work on, your technical skills, or was it something else?
I mean, I worked like, I think like the technical sort of like training that we had growing up was like, how many croches can you do? Or like, learning how to do step overs or scissors and things like that. And like, um, I would train like a lot on my own. I would like juggle a lot, like develop my relationship with the ball. But for me, like learning how to rainbow wasn't something that like I was setting, like I didn't have that being like a priority for me. Now I still try to do one. Can't do it. Um, but I mean, I could say growing up, I could have trained more when it came to like my technical skill set, but it's not like, again, I'm not like trashing myself as a player. I'm not like the worst technical player at all. I just like as a center mid, when you're able to like hold the ball like that, be able to switch directions quick. Like I can do all of that with like a few cuts and a Cruyff, but like I'm not going to be attacking doing scissors down the field. Um, you know. I definitely commend the people that can do that. But that like wasn't something. It might just be the way that like my like hips are too as like a female player. So no idea, but it wasn't something that I trained to do.
Is it something you didn't have the opportunity to learn, or just something you didn't like to do?
I would say that I didn't like to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of that, who was the most technically gifted player you play against?
Turkey Day.
Oh, you. Wow, I can't believe it. I'm speaking to the real celebrity here.
Don't listen to this guy. No, throughout your career, yeah, or you were really competitive, like so. Especially in college, like from college to maybe travel.
Yeah, playing against.
Oh, with like it could be
Or
somebody you
with.
play with. Yeah, someone you play with or against.
There's a girl that I played with at JMU named Sam Lofton, and like she started off she had a few stints playing professionally. She also like played overseas, in country, things like that. But she just has like her ability to just like roll the ball and like do quick V's here and there, but just like keep it is like phenomenal. It's interesting because like the play at like even at the college level that I played at JMU, like one of the things that not my college coach, but my club coach was very like adamant about was like really fitting the players to colleges that had their playing style. And I'm not saying that JMU wasn't like the most like technical school either, because we had a lot of great technical players. But that wasn't like our style of play. Like we sometimes would just like, I don't know, hit the ball up, to
You're
our
about to say
target.
you're gonna say boot the ball up, but you know
I
what?
was.
You
I was.
Hey, you can say it with no sense.
you didn't want to get caught,
To like
it's
a
like
target and then like, distribute back. But then like I think even as and I feel like I'm sort of like aging myself too, because I think like now, right, like the generations that are now coming to the forefront in football and stuff are more technically savvy and like gifted. Like they really do work at that. Versus like before it was just like, you would run plays sort of like American football, right? Like you had passing routes, right? um we had a lot of blueprints when it came to like passing out of the back, especially at JMU. um but it wasn't like, we had the players that would, try and do like the give and goes, play like the tiki taka kind of play, but that wasn't like our playing style. But back to, the technical players that I played against, or with, like, Sam was really technical. There was a Canadian forward that played on my team too, named Corky, and she actually played for the Canadian national team for a few years. And she like would do a lot of like the scissors and the step overs as she was attacking. But surprisingly, like a lot of the players at JMU like didn't. I'm not I'm not trying to be like judgmental of them either, but like again, that wasn't the style that like fit JMU.
yeah.
Versus like, the Stanfords or the UCLAs and like the UNCs and things like that. The schools like have those bigger schools. And I mean, we were still such a very good school. Like we would make it to the NCAA tournament like every year. We would win our conferences and stuff. So we were a very good football school. But yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think it's interesting because for me, I would think the technical aspect of the game is something that, like you can't learn height, right? Like you either tall, like you can't learn, there's a certain level of natural speed, right? And then you can build on it. You can always, get faster, but not, past a certain point. But with technique, and for me, I just always think is, and so I don't understand why, but to what you just said, actually kind of about JMU having like blueprints and stuff, it crystallizes one of the issues with the game
And the kind
here.
of players they actually recruited too.
Yeah,
That's
it crystallizes football here, where it's all good until you get on an international level, and then no, there's no blueprint, because when you're facing Mbappe or whoever else, or Messi's coming out, like you have to deal. If you don't have the technique, it's just you're done. So, but yeah. Anyway, I mean, I always think it's interesting. I'm always interested to learn about that aspect.
I guess I actually have a question for you. Like, I mean, do you think technique is literally just like your technical abilities, or do you also like consider that like your IQ of the game?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination, right? So your development as a player encompasses your game IQ, your technical abilities, your tactical understanding. Um, you know, those pieces must, is a must, like to be a true, like a top level player. Now, I think where it gets tricky is because when we're looking at, like, it's easy to get confused here in the US, right? Because most people here do not have that understanding of what a real baller is. And so if a kid or if a person can do, 10 juggles or a rainbow, let's just say, with nobody on them, they'll be, oh yeah, but it's a whole nother ball game, like when Neymar was doing rainbows with everybody when he was at Santos, right? In the middle of a game. It is like at the 70th minute, and Santos is going against Flamingo as and that's a different level of confidence.
mm-hmm.
Right. And so yeah, I mean, I think part of it, I think, is like, and technique is something that once if it's a part of your full training from, a baby, it just becomes a part of your game. Like it's not something you have to think about, or you don't need a blueprint to do. You have that technique. Like it's like, I'm sure if you rode a bike, you have you have that technique to ride a bike. That's what it is.
And
And
I want to add on that too. I think with just like with basketball, right? Because if you understand the game, like if you have passion for it, it's easier with your IQ to build off your IQ, right? So the technique come with the understanding and like how you feel about something, how you feel about the game. Because like Mike was saying, once you understand the level, like how good you have to be like to be playing against like a Messi, and you challenge yourself more. Like it's like you're enjoying it when you're doing it. So technique is something you can learn when you understand why you're doing it, like why it's so enjoyable. Like even Megan, people really steady how to Meg because they know how enjoyable it is to Meg someone, right? And it takes skills to actually Meg someone.
yeah,
True.
So once you understand it, and then easier to build a technique. But yeah, technique is something you can learn by practice and practice.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the way that I use technique is literally like I equate technique with more just like your skill, and literally just your skill with, and I say that when it comes to like knowing when to use different moves at a certain time, right?
Mhm.
For me, like I have a good, like a really great like soccer IQ. So when I say like I'm not a technical player, but I understand the game really well. So I make the simple passes because I don't need to hold the ball for 3 seconds. If you know what I mean, like I know
Yeah.
when I have good judgment of when to distribute and when to hold the ball, right?
Yeah.
And I guess that can also be some level of technique too. But
Yeah.
like when
Yeah.
it comes to like, can you do 400 juggles? And I'm gonna drop the ball 5 times before I can get to 400,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
But
No, actually the World Cup was a great place to illustrate technique,
right,
right?
absolutely,
Like when you saw like I mean, there's so many. Like France had a bunch of this, right? Like, of course, Mbappe's goal in the World Cup.
Mhm.
I mean, if you don't know what technique is, just replay that, or
absolutely, absolutely.
Giroud bicycle kick, replay that, like, and so these things are like it's a skill. It's not just like running with the like just trying to bulldoze your way, overpowering someone. That's not what it is. It's like that ability. Sometimes it's one touch, or Messi when Messi does his feint
Mhm.
and can still hit that ball, in the upper 90 with his left foot.
Mhm.
That's technique.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
technique can be body positioning as well.
Yeah,
Like so
yeah,
it's so many.
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
very
That's
true.
that's what makes it beautiful. Okay, so in when you were playing in high school, well, when you were high school age, playing competitive and travel, did you have any challenges as a player, especially when you transitioned from what is it, LVMC to
LMVSA to
yeah.
I
McLean,
mean,
yeah.
outside of like, yeah, I would say that I, that team had so much like team chemistry, like going from LMVSA where I was sort of like, it was like me and this other girl that were like at the top of the team. And at that point we were like, we just need to be challenged, right? So it's like I'm not gonna like gas me up and say like we were superstars of the team, but we were at a higher level than a lot of the rest of the competitors that we would play against in the league. And so we wanted more of a challenge, right? And then I joined um FCB, right? We were Net Force, that was the team. I think one of the biggest challenges that I had was like a lack of confidence. And for me, it was because I went from, being so high to like being like a great player among other great players.
Mm,
Everybody on my team played Division One, unless you like, or everybody on my team had the opportunity to play Division One. Like we won state cup, we went to national tournaments, we went to all these college showcases that we would win. Right, like I just had so many great players around me, and it's easy when you're the best player on a team, but it's hard when you're the best player, when you're a good player among other great players.
mm,
So it was a humbling experience for me, but it was also like sort of like an uphill battle because they did have a lot more, like that's where I learned my soccer, like my soccer knowledge and my soccer education from, like my coach was, I'm gonna get this wrong. He was from across the pond. But and it's a different level of playing.
mm,
It's a different way to see the game. It's embedded in his culture, and so like he just had so much more passion than, like my other coaches and stuff. And so it was, for me, it was a lot of just like a confidence thing. And I think up until I even got like recruited to play Division One, that I was still like, am I good enough to do this?
mm.
So it wasn't like a technical thing for me at all, like ever. It was just, for me, it was all mental.
Yeah. You actually touch on something that um I don't think it's ever come up, but it's something that is obviously is a part of the reality, which is transitioning. You were a big fish in a small pond, essentially,
Yeah.
which made you, there's a feedback loop, right? So like being that also gave you the confidence to be an even bigger fish in that pond, right? But then you transition because you felt like, I don't know if it was you or your parents, but this happens a lot actually. So you felt like, oh, I need to go to a shinier light, it's more competitive, blah, blah, etc. And then you get there and it is actually detrimental to your confidence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't sound like you navigated that. Like were you able to gain your confidence while there or gain it back, or wasn't it until you transitioned to college that, you found yourself again as a player?
Man, this is like therapy, like working through problems and trauma. Um, it, um,
Oh, man.
it's so interesting because I spent a lot of time, and maybe I shouldn't because it's like get over it, but it's like I spent a lot of time thinking about how different it was for me as a player growing up.
Mm,
And I mean, outside of like, the lack of like representation, right? Um, it it was also like the transition for me, like it was a team that was so close to me in proximity that was like it was down the street. I grew up with these girls, and then I went to like a new team. I had to make a whole new group of friends. And to be quite frank, like these are kids that made like their families made a lot more money than my family did. So it was also like that kind of lifestyle change for me where I like had to there were things that like I literally couldn't do. I would go to McLean for practice. These kids had like massive houses. One people that lived in like Great Falls and stuff. So that for me that was also like a different change. And then on top of that, it was that whole confidence thing. So it was a lot of things that I was like dealing with during that time where it was like, okay, I want to be liked by these girls. I want to be liked by my coach. And he was also just a hard ass and I loved him for it. But like, again, different time, right? Like if he coached now, he would probably be fired like the rest of the Spirit coaches, right? Like it's, it's, love him to death, right? But like there was a lot of shit that I went through and we went through. Like he would call us shit, like he would say things to us, and like at the time it's like great, tough love. That's how I
oh,
learned how to play, right? Now it's like emotional abuse.
uh,
Um, so there was just a lot, right? So I guess to package all of that up, I eventually did get over it. I was able, and get over the confidence thing, right? Like,
mm,
I think it was a lot of me just convincing myself that like I deserve to be here, right? Like, and my coach wasn't somebody that just like took people for charity, right? Like he wanted to have the best of the best. And I think that like I needed to continue to believe that myself. And it wasn't until, and I remember this like so clearly, we won state cup, and I like got like the trophy and the game ball because I got MVP of the game as a defender, right? And so that was like such a pivotal moment for me as a person on that team, because then I realized that like I am actually impactful and that like I am literally here because I deserve to be here, not because somebody felt bad that I wanted a chance to play in college. You know what I mean? So
mm.
um yeah, I worked through the confidence thing, but then throughout college that's a whole nother ball game.